list. Which brings me on to the other person that has kindly agreed to just talk a bit about their career as well. So, Doug, you joined us back in January as chair, and so yeah, just give us a bit of your background.
Thanks, thanks, hello everybody. I don't think I met everybody face, but hopefully at some point soon, when COVID finally was kind of all physically back together again. So I'm also from Glasgow. You can probably tell from my voice, even though I lived in England for more than half my life. I was born in Glasgow. My mum came from Allison Street in Dublin Hill, and she became a pharmacist, ran a pharmacy in Torrey Glen. My dad was born in the Gorbals, so one of 6 kids, one room, all that sort of, really not very pleasant stuff in the 1930s, but somehow eventually became a Church of Scotland minister. And I remember when I was a small boy, my dad was going to Glasgow University and studied to be a minister. And we went to churches in Pennycook in south of Edinburgh, then back to Croft Foot in Glasgow. And I went to, at the time, I thought it was a terrible school, place called Stonelaw High School. It's probably wildly better now. But in 1973, when I went there the first time, it had just started to do hires. It previously just been a kind of O-level place, and there was no heritage of anything like doing well at school or doing well in exams. It was mostly about fighting all the time, and it was pretty tough. And then my relatives would say to me, "Doug, best days of your life were school days," and I was going, "What? Surely not." And I really hated it. I eventually escaped there, and I got into Glasgow University somehow. And I was only 16, so I was quite young. In Scotland, you can go to university quite young. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I started off doing law and then changed to doing accountancy. So I did a Bachelor of Accountancy at Glasgow Uni. Didn't really like the exams and stuff like that, but I did like the sport and the beer, and just great fun. I loved Glasgow University. Then went into chartered accountancy training, did that. Eventually worked for Price Waterhouse. Didn't enjoy doing auditing and doing big businesses, but it was really interesting. You pick up a lot of experience. Finally qualified, miraculously got my exams, passed, and became a chartered accountant and headed down to London. That was like mid-80s, and the economy was pretty weak in Scotland. And most of us at the time, it's wrong now, but at the time, a lot of us headed south. A lot of people from Ireland and Scotland came down to London. I went for 2 interviews, came back to my flat in Shawlands. That evening, I was offered a job at Hertz and also digital computing. And I thought, digital computing, full of really bright people, better avoid that. Hertz, smaller company, but quite exciting. Maybe I can do okay there. So I had a job traveling around Europe, spent a month at every one of the European head offices, so Copenhagen, Madrid, and Rome. Great experience because I was in the early 20s. So I picked up a lot of experience of that business, car rental, and I loved it. And they then offered me a job in London to do business planning. Then I went into Hertz UK, the subsidiary rather than the European organisation. It was a recession, 1989, another recession, 1989, and car sales values went off a cliff. And the business suddenly lost lots of money because we bought lots of cars and we had to sell them. It was a disaster. And I was in finance, and the general manager was at his wit's end, an Irish guy, a lovely guy called Aidan. He said, "Doug, I don't know what to do. We're just losing so much money." I went, "I'll try and do fleet." So I just kind of volunteered for something which I didn't really know much about. And I was quite young still, I'm 28 I think at the time, and they made me fleet director. So I bought and sold all the cars for her. And didn't really know what I was doing, but I had the kind of arrogance of being a Scottish accountant, and there is a bit of arrogance, and there's a kind of thing about that. Like Jane doesn't exhibit it at all, but there's a thing about being a finance guy, especially down in London. So my first meeting was with the chairman of Ford UK, and I was 28, didn't know what I was talking about, and he was in television almost every day. At the time, he was quite a famous guy, another Scottish guy called Ian McAllister. And he treated me like, "Who are you?" And my job was to buy 20,000 cars that year from Ford. I loved it. I really loved it. And eventually we turned it around and we used sums, and I was using a portable PC laptop when nobody else had one. And it gave me a kind of advantage against the competition. So we modelled the fleet differently. Ended up being the finance director there. Then the European head of Hertz, who was a Belgian guy, said, "If you want to run a company, it's good that you've got finance and know a bit about cars now, but you need to understand about people and customers." And because I was still quite young, Scottish accountant, I was thinking, well, customers are like debtors, really. They just owe you money. That's what my view of them was. And people were a cost. So they gave me operations to run, and I realised that that was completely wrong. So I still had the financial backing, but I realised when I went to 2 sites in Newcastle, and the first site, the lady who ran the site was really nice, really positive, charismatic, enjoyed her job. You could tell she had a rapport with customers, the staff loved her. And the financial performance of the branch in Newcastle was terrific. It was one of the top ones in the country. And I went along to another one just outside Newcastle, the opposite. So the guy was bored, didn't enjoy his job, it was untidy, it was kind of messy, customers came in and were treated a bit like I used to treat customers, like, where's your money? And then I looked at the performance of that branch and it was awful. And I know it sounds really obvious, but when you have high engagement and good people, miraculously the business performs better than the opposite. So it was I know it sounds daft, but I didn't understand that until I saw it in real life and I was responsible for that. So then went into other car rental companies, was a managing director of budget in the UK at the boom time, just as the internet was coming. Bought lots of companies, and then the company in America went bust. So that's another learning. Check the balance sheet of the parent company, regardless of what the local organisation is like. Then went to Holiday Autos, which was an up-and-coming challenger brand, kind of a parallel with Candidate.ID. It was a car rental broker, so we didn't own cars, but we owned a booking system, and we worked with travel agents to place bookings around the world, and we were actually the biggest in the world at the time. And we were a telephone-based company. It was 2000, 2001. And then the internet was just beginning to be commercialized. I remember we used to have studies where people literally off the street would come in and we'd watch what they did on the keyboard to see where they were going on the website, because most people were not familiar with commercial websites in 2000, 2001. So we decided that was the thing. And we almost overnight changed the business to a web business. And we went about £200 million worth of business. And profitability not through the roof. And we started to make huge inroads into the growing world of e-commerce. We had partnerships with airlines that were modern at the time, like Go Airlines, now part of EasyJet. At the time, it was the British Airways Challenger output. And we worked closely with people who were modern and younger generally. And we did really well. And then we had 9/11. September 2001 was a disaster for the travel industry. And it was a real shock, but actually accelerated our transition towards the internet. And we sold the business to lastminute.com, which was very famous at the time, not so famous now, but the founders were on the TV, they were the darlings of the internet at the time, Martha Lane Fox and Ben Moberman. My boss for the first time was a lady, Martha Lane Fox. And they were on the stock market, and they were a big travel site, and they kept buying more companies because they had lots of money, because they floated just before the stock market crashed at the time, and yet another recession and crash. And they had cash, so they acquired other businesses like Holiday Autos. Into that, I saw the great culture we had in Holiday Autos being eaten by an unpleasant culture. I was surprised. We thought that would be lovely and really go forward and positive, but they weren't. They were much more hammering us that. So I saw a great culture in Holiday Autos being eaten by bad culture. And then at a certain point, somebody phoned me up and said, do you want to run an HR company? And I was like, I'm running businesses and finance background. Why would I want to run an HR company? And then I realized, well, actually, I do love people. I love the impact of people. But I can see when you get great training programs and great talent in place, you can see an enormous difference in the performance. So I'll give it a go. That was a company called Ceridian. And we had a payroll business and an HR business and an outsourcing business. We had lots of offices around the UK. And I was running everything outside America. At the time, it was an American corporation. So I didn't know much about it at all in terms of what's HR technology, HR software. I kind of taught myself and learned with some bright people. And then we realized we had far too many offices, and at the time the business was loss-making, so we did lots of things to try and improve the business. We built new technology, we amalgamated proposition for customers, we got much more engaged people in core, but we had too many offices, so we consolidated things. And I'm in big connection with Glasgow because we used contacts at the Scottish Development Agency, Scottish Development International, and we built a new office at Hillington, near Hillington and Braehead. Where we had our biggest UK office, and built the business up quite nicely. We started to do really quite well. Long story short, Ceridian now is relisted on the NASDAQ in North America, for flying, a SaaS business. And the bit that I was running the UK was transition towards SaaS. And the Americans, the shareholders, private equity, decided to sell that piece. We sold it to a company called SD Works, which is a Belgian business based in Brussels. And they now what was Ceridian at Braehead is now SD Works at Braehead, and there's still another Ceridian now. They've reinvented themselves, and they have an office at Sky Park, actually, somewhere in Middle Glasgow. So there's two companies now, both coming out of that. And after that, I didn't really enjoy, to be honest, working for yet another corporation, a bit like what Mike said earlier. The Belgians, lovely, lovely people, but it was difficult to fathom, how to move a business forward with pace. I decided to do something else, and I went off and did that kind of portfolio. Now, I'm a non-exec director at a few different places, non-exec chair, and I do love it. I love Scott and Adam when I first met them, Jane. I love what you guys are doing and the opportunity, and I love the fact that you're in the middle of Glasgow. You're almost my dream office, overlooking the Clyde. It's like Central Station and everything that comes with it. But really, it's an exciting space, and hopefully I can bring some of my experience from all this disparate past into helping your leaders and ourselves move the business forward. And going forward, so today I spent most of my week with a business called Access, which is one of the leading UK software businesses. It's grown from 50 million turnover 7 years ago to about 350 million today. It makes really nice margin, has an interest in the recruitment space. So there are kind of some adjacencies between Candidate.ID and what I'm doing with Access. And I also am non-exec in a pensions technology business, a data penetration protection business, and also a leadership development business alongside Candidate.ID. So I'm lucky today. I have the opportunity to do different things. I live down in England. It's nice. It's not what they say in Scotland. It's actually nice living in England. People are quite nice, but I do miss so much of Scotland. With my wife and I live here with a dog and 2 girls. One of our daughters is 15 and looks like my wife, who looks English, but she declares herself to be Scottish, which is great, although she's got a very English accent. And the 13-year-old, who looks much more like my mother, actually declares herself to be English. So we have a mixed family here down in Hampshire.
Great. So Calcutta Cup Day is interesting in your house then?
The Scottish are always going to win that emotionally, even if we lose in the field, aren't we? It's much more important to us. I was terrified of going to Twickenham the last time we played there. And after half-time, that's the game when England ran away with it in the first half, and then Scotland came back in the second half. And sadly I didn't go because I was kind of scared of it. And now look what happened, and I'd love to be there, at least in the second half. I'd love to be there.
What about England versus Germany in the semi-finals?
Germany every time.
Yeah, anyone but England.
Yeah. So, and still, despite being down here for 30-something years, I support England at cricket for some reason, but football and rugby, I'd rather support Afghanistan or Costa Rica against England any day.
Yeah, I think there's a few of us that agree with that. One piece of thank you very much for that, Doug. Doug and Mike, you both had absolutely fascinating careers.